Welcome to Lean Into Leadership, where we lead the conversation about anything and everything leadership related. On today's episode, ESG joins the show. Hey everybody, it's Brandon Skiles, and welcome to another episode of Lean Into Leadership, episode 9. Super excited for this one. Today we're going to discuss how to make the most out of your college experience as a leader, dive deeper into what resources are available at college and that can help you develop your leadership and gain some valuable knowledge. So a little bit about our guest, Erin Smith-Gaken here. Erin has previously worked in admissions at CMU, led the student success coach team back when that was a thing, and currently holds 2 degrees from CMU as well, and currently serves as the director for new student orientation. Erin, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How's it going?
Happy to be here. Thanks, Brandon. It's going great. It's a beautiful, sunny Monday. So if we want to enjoy a Monday, at least the sun's out. It's the first couple weeks of the semester, so things are up and rolling, and I'm just happy to be here with all of you today.
Awesome. Alrighty, so before we jump into content, I would love for you to share with our audience a little bit more about yourself and your role and what you do.
Sure thing. So as you mentioned, I started my official higher ed career, if you will, in admissions and recruitment related roles, eventually leading me then to a role kind of switching gears from recruiting students and getting them to CMU to trying to retain them in that success coach position. So I oversaw or supervised the success coach staff that we used to have on campus here. They've now morphed into the academic advisor role, so still offering that service, just not in that formal role anymore. And that brought me to becoming the new student orientation director. So I've been officially in this role for about a year. I served as interim for about 6 or 8 months into the beginning of the role and been enjoying it ever since, really making an impact on students as they come into CMU. Personally, or more information about me in terms of just me, I'm a runner, so something I do for my own health and also just well-being and sanity as well. I always joke and say it's the one time of the day that I am quiet, so I actually run. Contrary to most people, music-free, just if I'm outside, enjoying the quiet and reflecting time. So that's helpful for me in many ways. I have 2 kids. They're 8 and about 18 months at this point, or 7, almost 8 and 18 months. Keep us really busy as well. But from a small rural town, came to CMU, wanted to stay in higher ed, and here we are today.
Awesome. If you get the chance to connect with Erin, if you're a student here or maybe even thinking about coming to CMU, definitely do it. Great individual, awesome person.
Thanks.
We'll definitely get you connected to where you need to be in your college journey. So first question for you, how did you find your passion for working with students and working in higher ed?
Sure. So I say this, so I'll kind of come back to this, but I want to start with where my brain goes on a daily basis when I come to work, or if I'm running an orientation or working with new students or current students that are staff. I come to work every day for you. That's really what I tell students. I've literally told incoming or current students that, and I say, put me to work. So my whole kind of basis of working in higher ed was knowing that I wanted to help and educate in a different way than K through 12 students. So whether that is through helping them grow their leadership or helping them learn a new skill, getting them through life later on, right? Those transferable skills. I just find it really valuable and a great way to give back. I wanted to be a teacher. That's when I originally came here. I thought I might be a K through 12 educator. And then I decided kids are not for me in bulk style, not 30 at a time. And so working with the older youth, if you will, the college age population has been really rewarding, and I can connect with them a lot more than I can a 6-year-old. So it works.
Awesome. Love that. So what are some ways new student orientation correlates to leadership development?
Sure. So I guess you can look at it in 2 different ways. From our staffing perspective, so when we obviously hire our students to help us run the orientations, we want that position to be intentional in a lot of different ways. So making sure that they are getting some identity development, right? What are some of their past perceptions they've had or things that they've done that have led to where they are now? How can we help develop them to get more comfortable with and accepting feedback and growing and learning in that way. We obviously want them to practice some social responsibility, so helping to identify ways that could impact students either positively or maybe negatively with the overarching orientation model. So as students, looking to them for a lot of their feedback on how we could improve different things for different groups or populations, and analyzing that as needed. And then, of course, getting to know other students on campus, right, who might be different from them, or getting some experiences with diverse populations, again, that they might not be as experienced with, or maybe never have worked with in the past. So a lot of different pieces that we try to roll into the leadership component of their role as a mentor, on top of kind of the obvious, I guess, more for me, critical thinking, adapting, all those different kind of skills that can come into a role where they're pretty autonomous throughout the day. So from the staffing perspective, leadership development, a lot of that happening in terms of the students helping us run each day. Incoming students, I think it's more just that awareness building and helping them to kind of see where their career or their educational career could take them in terms of that leadership component. We know that not all students are going to raise their hand immediately when they come to orientation, wanting to jump in to be a leader, or this as much as I do, they might not think of themselves as a leader, right? They've never done something that was leadership before. When we also probably could both talk about that's probably not accurate at all, and they probably have some situations that they've had that we could tie leadership to easily.
Right.
So really just kind of opening their eyes up to more of what's going to be an opportunity for them when they're here, and not overwhelming them like fire hose too much stuff at them at once, like a little trickle, a little hose like information at the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah, I think like that's the one big thing with orientation is there's a lot of information, right? I think a lot of students are nervous, excited to maybe start that college experience and journey because it's a big transition for anyone.
Correct.
But then again, making sure that they know the information they need to succeed, but then also, again, finding ways to kind of continue that development throughout. And I think something, too, this is new this year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the phases that new orientation kind of developed, one was online, right, with some of those online components and things that they needed to do before they came in person, or did a virtual orientation where they got some other information, and they have another part afterwards, right before classes start. So kind of breaking it up, because it is a lot. It can be overwhelming at times, right, with the information. But I think that really does help with, again, that transition, and also learning some of those things, and give students time to reflect as well before they maybe start that college experience, which is really cool.
Yes, we don't want to. We know that one day is a lot to shove all that information at them and expect them to retain even 10% of it, right? So our goal is obviously to give them some content, hopefully get them connected to another student or a couple incoming students, maybe a mentor, an upperclassman that can help them navigate and become that connection piece. So really my end goal for any incoming student, like their perfect orientation day, if we could say that that's even an option, right? No day's going to be perfect, but if we could say the perfect or ideal day would be having them feel like they belong here, right? That making this choice to come to CMU, which is, as you mentioned, a huge transition to going to college in general. So let's add on the specific place you are going to, that making sure that they are connected in some way, feeling comfortable and confident in that decision to come here. So again, my hope is that they just make one meaningful connection that day. Again, it could be with a student, it could be with a faculty member or a staff member. And then if they did bring a parent or supporter with them, that parent or supporter is getting kind of that mirrored experience, that they as that parent or supporter are feeling that their child is going to fit in and get connected and feel confident in their decision. So on their drive home, whether it's 10 minutes or 7 hours, wherever they're heading back, that they can have that conversation, and hopefully that supporter, if they have one, can kind of be supportive even more, and knowing that, you're making a great choice, and, and go from there. So we want them to know the things, right? The college things after each day, but that's why we have those resources, the technology in place, so they can refer back. I really just want them to feel good about that decision in the end. And of course, get their class schedule. Huge win for them. That's what they really want. So that tangible thing that they all want at the end of the day. So
definitely. Great. Alrighty, so how can students get involved in some leadership roles or developmental opportunities within orientation programming?
Yeah, great question. So we have a variety of mentors from different experiences throughout campus. So we usually have a staff of about 30 student orientation mentors. So that would be kind of like the entry level, if you will, position as an undergrad. We do want students to have at least a year under their academic belt, if you will. So essentially, finish your freshman year 2 semesters and then can start up with us. Or if you're a transfer student, same thing. So we want you to have that year-long experience here at CMU, so you can then be a great resource for incoming students. So the orientation mentor role, again, is kind of the entry level, but it's not to say there isn't, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of different developmental areas that they can grow in terms of their leadership. So I mentioned, again, the critical thinking, adaptability, autonomy, and independent work is huge and a big thing that I know a lot of students, it might be very new to them in this type of a role. I know there are some roles on campus that have that maybe similar to it. I think of like campus ambassadors, right? They're out giving tours for 90 minutes by themselves, kind of us trusting in them to be that representative for the university. And this is a very similar role in that regard. So training them and providing them with that adequate the tools that they need to be successful, but that mentor role still can grow in leadership. So then we have another level, which is our orientation program assistants, also referred to as OPAs. Gotta love the acronyms. And so I know working with orientation, you're familiar with that role as well. And so those are kind of our points people for the mentors to rely on or kind of go to. They help with training, obviously. So we have the family team and the student team, and they help to facilitate that piece of the day with their mentors. And then we do have one currently right now that is for training. And so they help put together the huge amount of work that goes into training the mentors for that few weeks that we offer that before the season starts effectively. And then I know, again, working with you, we have in the past, this isn't, I wouldn't say a consistent model, but we've had many graduate students who, of course, have reached out to us with interest in completing a practicum or just getting some really neat experiences, maybe different than what they've done in the past. And so we, of course, would offer opportunities for grad students if we can find something that makes sense or meets the needs. So kind of different levels, but lots of development and leadership opportunities for sure.
I mean, it's a great opportunity for sure. Being able to work this past summer with orientation and seeing those mentors kind of come in. I think we saw a lot of development through their leadership, but also through their kind of personal life as well. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have fun with it too. And it's a great way, again, to kind of onboard that next group of students or really also help those family and supporters out and making them feel comfortable and confident in their students' choice with coming here. So it's a cool opportunity.
I 100% agree, obviously. So apply if you want.
Definitely.
But I also would say to think about it big picture, kind of that macro level of impact that you're having. Now, you obviously aren't interacting with all 2,000 plus students, right, who are coming here in the fall as new freshmen and add on the hundreds of new transfer students too, right? Because our staff does host the orientations for freshmen and transfer students. So, but if you think about that, right, and how many students that you have impacted, whether again individually or just the collective group of thousands of people that and their supporters and family members, right? So add on hundreds more folks there, thousands more. It really is a way for you to say you made a huge impact on an incoming student's experience to CMU. You really are that representative that maybe first after their admissions process, right, we get that there's a lot of folks who go through that process and engage quite heavily with admissions. But if they are someone that didn't do as much of that, attending the events and doing all of that, their mentor could really be that first person that is that piece of the puzzle for them, right, of that college career that they have here at CMU. So really impactful role. So
definitely
I'm glad to be a part of
cool.
it in that capacity as well. Yeah.
When do applications for that open up for maybe our students that are currently on campus?
Great question. As typically around February, early-ish February, we like to have them hired leading right up into spring break, so that early March time frame. We might be making a few adjustments this year, but generally it would be that later kind of early to late February time frame, learning either right before spring break or interviews maybe this year could be right after spring break. So we're talking, by late March or so.
Sweet.
They would know if they have the position.
Engage Central.
Engage Central. Okay. Check it out.
Engage Central. Awesome. Alrighty. Next up, in your perspective, what does the ideal new student orientation experience look like? I touched upon it a little bit, but
yeah. So I know I touched on it for the actual new students and the supporters. So I would just kind of go back again on saying, you don't have to know all the things. We even say that, right? I have said that. We know you're not going to remember all these things. I bet if I had, what's the old expression? If I had $1 for every time I said that, I would have lots of dollars. Because I know they're not. I'm being very realistic with them, and I want to make sure our staff is realistic, knowing that they're not going to remember all the things. We did flip, again, to that phase one where they did a lot of the kind of content heavy stuff on that phase one online those lessons, because at least they can easily refer back to that PowerPoint or that video or those questions or that content. So we did kind of flip the model this year to where we really wanted those mentors to have a big piece of their role really be that engagement piece, right? So we don't really have them standing up in front of a screen presenting 45 PowerPoint slides, because that is not really overtly engaging for the incoming student. So we did a lot of kind of breaking apart, putting those online, so that way we could have them have a little bit more of that one-on-one or, small group connection. So love that we made that change. I think it went really well. And then students also get the chance then, instead of staring at a PowerPoint and not being able to talk to the new students to their sides, right, they're able to even interact more with each other. And we got that from our feedback, that students really appreciated and valued, what was the one thing that you valued the most? Being able to interact with other students. That came up time and time again. So going to keep kind of that piece of orientation pretty similar moving forward. But from a mentor's perspective, in terms of the ideal, I want them to also feel proud that this is the role that they have. So coming in and leaving work each day, being proud of that work that they just did. They're long days. Sometimes they're very hot days. And so making sure that they know that is, again, you're touching thousands of people's lives in some way, shape, or form, whether you really think about it or not. And then that they also are feeling like they're growing too, right? You mentioned that you saw, 100% could watch, some students specifically transition and grow in a very positive way throughout the summer, just getting more confident, and whether that's their public speaking or just being increasing their customer service. I'm really big on that service experience, that students are trained to respond to things in a very high level service manner. And so when I could witness that for myself, like watch a student do the thing that I was just waiting from afar to see if they did, and they do it, and it's like, yay, small victory. So I really just want them to feel empowered to kind of, again, make critical decisions if they need to, feel like they're growing as a student and as a leader, and of course, again, impacting those incoming students.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really like that idea of having students have more time with students in their groups on those orientation days, because you do split them up by academic college or the intended college their major, their program is going to be a part of.
Yep.
As we know, that also often shifts sometimes, which is totally
It
normal
does.
and okay. But on that day, I think we hear stories even from this past summer where people find their roommates at orientation, right? Where they make friends that are going to be in their programs in the future. And we also try to usually put a mentor that maybe is in that program in charge of that group, right? So that's a great resource for that student and even that mentor to kind of find them for their connections and get people involved, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Concept.
Yeah, so tell your friends that are from all the different academic colleges if they want to be a mentor. We try really hard to do that. Sometimes it just doesn't work, but we definitely make that a priority. If we know that someone is from the College of Science and Engineering, great, you can be in the College of Science and Engineering as a mentor, because you're right, there is that natural, that extra level of connection that they can share their experiences, the involvements that they have, those types of things. So end goal, that not always possible, but we definitely try to do that as much as we can.
Yeah. I mean, and a great experience too if you maybe are representing a different college. You get to learn as well, right? If you're in that mentor role, something new.
Correct.
So
yes, they definitely definitely get that for sure.
Yeah. So. And you get connected with more faculty and professionals around campus members. So overall, just great experience.
They meet lots of different staff for sure throughout that experience for sure.
Awesome. What are some resources around campus that are available to students to grow their leadership?
Resources? Oh, geez. So many. I mean, really pick anywhere. I think the first thing that we need to do is make sure students, whether they're incoming or a current student, know that and as cliche as it is, right, leadership is for anyone, right? You don't have to have thought that you've done it before or that you're the best. And so in terms of a resource, obviously the Leadership Institute, plug that, right? So that's what the business of the Leadership Institute is helping develop those leadership skills, whether, again, novice or feeling like you're a little bit more skilled in that area and developing or honing your current skills. But I would say, obviously, right, just starting even if you want an on-campus job. I mean, just working with Student Employment Services and then getting a job in an office. That could be a great resource for you. I know in our office, we try to, aside from mentors, right, the student staff who work in the office, we try really hard to make sure that they're getting kind of more of a mentoring role from our staff, from myself and my other colleagues. And so in terms of a resource there, I feel like that they can grow and learn, and we can kind of help mold and shape their experience too in a different way. But obviously student groups, right, or RSOs, registered student organizations that students might want to join, that one's a pretty big one where students could obviously start as a member, grow in their leadership in terms of becoming on an e-board or an executive board. Really volunteering, right? That's a great resource in terms of you can see lots of different folks in what their leadership looks like in a service or a philanthropic type of a model. So I feel like that's a hard question to ask because it depends on where that student is at the time in terms of what type of leadership resource or leadership development resource they're looking for. Like, are they starting brand new? Maybe they just need to join a group and kind of observe and watch others, right? Maybe they weren't involved in high school or at their college that they transferred from. And so it's hard for me to really articulate a specific thing or two because you could look around and really start anywhere and get some things out of it in terms of leadership. So I know that didn't really answer your question, but...
No, I think it did. I mean, that's a good point, though. It's like everywhere, right? And you can engage with that in different ways and to fit your needs, right? So I think we talk about that a lot, like exploring and finding what you're what you're passionate about. And that's the way to do that is by getting involved, right?
Like start with what you don't like, right? That's the easy place. I always tell students, if you are overwhelmed, what don't you like, right? And even if it's not related to your major, I don't care. Go join the running club. Right. And you're going to meet new people and you're still going to get different experiences from that you could get just as much if you joined the marketing, whatever the marketing club or multiple different clubs related to an academic major, right, might be. And so, I don't think you need to tie it necessarily to even like your long-term career goal. You're going to get those leadership experiences from a variety of different places and in a variety of different ways and from other people, right? It's just you have to leave your room, right? Like step one, engage with other people, which I know we are trying to combat that to an extent, right? One of the challenges I think that students are facing is post-COVID, interacting with folks in person. And then I think coming to college, it just adds a layer of that transition to them and getting that connection piece. So I know it's a whole different topic, but we can say if you don't leave your room or your apartment, it's going to be a lot harder for you to obviously find those resources and to get involved and to get that leadership development. Yeah.
I mean, if you live in the residence halls too, there's always constant programming going on, right? Like go down the floor, go to an event that's in your residence hall area, and that's a super easy way to meet people and get involved. And get you connected elsewhere on campus too, right? And find those different opportunities. Or
just talk to your RA or your inclusion assistant, or now they have the community council advisors. And so there's so many folks right there in residence life if you are living on campus.
Right.
And we know, in all honesty, if you're living off campus, it is a little harder, right? To kind of get in that engagement mindset and to come back to campus for those things. So if you started on campus and then you transition off, right, you already kind of maybe have that foundation. But I would say for folks who immediately just start off campus, or again for transfers, that for sure checking in, coming to campus, joining groups, talking to faculty, right? There's all those different kind of means or channels I think that they could use to get something, right, to get started.
Definitely, yeah. Going a little deeper on that, then why is it so important for students to engage in those like co-curricular, extracurricular opportunities during their academic journey? Great
question. I've been asked that multiple times. I would say it doesn't all have to happen at once, right? Especially for a new student. Maybe as a transfer, you've already kind of colleged before and been involved and kind of figured out how you operate with that, your academics and your extracurriculars or co-curriculars. But nonetheless, it's important because transferable skills are super important. Depending on the career or your goals for your career, right? It could be a huge benefit to you to have X, Y, or Z things listed that you've done that, again, might not have anything to do with your major, but that could easily say, from this, I got to lead this group or plan this event, or I learned these specific skill sets. And so those co-curriculars are going to give them a bunch of those different buzzwords or, LinkedIn or old school cover letter, however you're trying to apply for jobs later, or internships that those employers are going to be looking for. Right. The degree is important, right? We all know that's why you came here. For some folks, the degree is, you are going, if you're going to get a teacher ed degree, like chances are that you're going to be a teacher. If you're going to be majoring in accounting, chances are you're going to be an accountant, right? But for a lot of students, right, like for my major and for many others, right, you're not kind of tied to that one career, that one industry. And so being able to grab and take a hold of all these other opportunities from your co-curriculars that you could add, again, whether it is event planning or just supervision, right? You oversaw people and a process. You can critically think, like that's a huge one. Or leadership. We know that employers are looking for leadership in a variety of different ways. communication skills.
Mhm.
And so
Big
whether
one.
you're joining a student group and you can present in front of a group, whether you're the person that sends professional emails to different professors or faculty or whoever trying to get, asking for different things or speakers for your group, whatever it might be, to just verbal communication, I'm a stickler for that as well. And so I think that that's another big piece that they can kind of learn or hopefully have someone of a mentor type role or some type of supervisor who can help them tweak those skills. So yeah, I know that was a very long-winded answer, but I feel like you can get so much from those things
Yeah.
outside of the classroom that, again, the degree is obviously the most important thing, but what goes with it, right? I always would say, if I was an employer hiring you and you had a 3.0 and you had a slew of cool involvements and experiences and all these different talents and experiences that you've acquired over your 4-year degree, and then next to you was a 4.0 student with no involvements, nothing else, I would pick the 3.0 student most likely on paper, right? Because
Definitely.
they're probably going to be able to bring a lot more to the table. So kind of answers in itself, I guess.
For sure. That was an awesome point too you made about like that program or that degree, right?
Yep.
Like, there's so many, again, like opportunities where maybe you don't wind up in that direct field, but because you were involved in different areas, you maybe got connected with some people.
Correct.
Or found out again that you were into something else.
Yeah.
Or maybe you do go into that field, but maybe because you had a skill in another area, it opens up a new opportunity for you never saw before.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's really
And
cool.
some of those groups could obviously very much lead to networking opportunities. Yeah. And meeting all those different people. 100%. I think it opened, I'm sure so you could talk to students who it's opened up doors for sure. And I would say myself would kind of fall into that. I just kind of did an internship with admissions when I was in grad school, similar to kind of how you did. And I didn't get my master's in higher ed, right? I wasn't quite there yet, I guess, in terms of my career goals and what I wanted to kind of do once I realized that I didn't like kids in bulk. I don't work as well with kids in bulk, I'll say. But I definitely feel like that's how I started networking and learning and learning people on campus and getting those experiences. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Same here. We all wind up somewhere, right?
For sure.
Awesome. So kind of talked about that student mentor position. We can kind of maybe frame it in this lens, and if you have other advice in a different way too. But how can students maybe in a leadership or mentorship role best support new students on campus, whether that may be during an orientation process or when they maybe first arrive, maybe that first semester, that first part of a semester?
Sure. So this isn't a required piece of the mentor role, but I know some mentors do happily send a follow-up email to their group from each day to just say, you can contact me at any time. And so, or they share their socials, which is perfectly fine too. We just want to make sure that, that student doesn't feel that is a required piece of the job, because we understand, for your own, privacy or whatever reason you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. But even if you're not doing that, I still think that student, they could still find your email, right, in CMU's directory, if you will. So I'm fine with them at least sending an email. At least that student has an easier way to just hit reply, right, versus having to actively go out and do that. And they know that maybe it's from months ago, it's at the bottom of their inbox, but they know that there's that email there from Brandon, right, that I can always go to him. So I would say that those new students, in terms of what they could get from a current student or staff, would really just be trying to, again, help build that connection. And that was a huge piece of my training this year for the students, for the mentor staff, was really your end goal is making a student feel like they belong here.
Right.
So whatever that looks like, however you can paint that picture for them or make them feel good, that's really what I want you to do, which again goes back to the service, goes back to engaging, goes back to making them feel like this is the place for them in their new home. So I don't want to say that there's a specific way that has to happen, because you might do that differently than your peer, right? But that those students as leaders can just try to connect however they can with their incoming group. And I would say I would be happy with that as long as they're feeling like they're making that connection.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Alrighty, what trends are we seeing within what new students need from leaders, and or what are students looking for in experiences, kind of in that post-COVID, navigating that, because we do know that college students are a little bit different, right, than maybe college students that were entering school before the pandemic, and for good reason, right, as it's changed a lot of things.
It really has. I know I kind of mentioned a little bit about that post-COVID engaging, getting out of their room piece. I think, and it's not it's not a blame game. I would just say, I think a lot of incoming freshmen specifically, especially those living in a residence hall, right, are looking or thinking that connection is going to be instant, right? That they're going to make that best friend with their college roommate and they're going to be best friends and meet each other's weddings and all the things, right? Forever and ever. And that might not be the case, right? So I think we have to try to do our best to make sure that perception is realistic, right?
Okay.
That it's going to take a little bit of work for you to build a relationship, right? And become best friends with this student. Thankfully, the technology that exists now is helpful, right? So they can connect generally virtually or, again, on their social media in some way before they come here, which is great. It gives them that starting point, I think, that a lot of them need. But then it's that in-person interaction, right? That I think is the part that there's that pain point that some students, not all, I think, experience. So that will be, I think, one of the trends is just how do we get them to kind of like learn how to re-engage and learn how to create relationships again that they had to kind of virtually have for a couple good years. So that's one trend. Addressing it, I think, is just making sure that they know that that's not going to happen overnight. That instant gratification isn't going to be immediate. Right. The other thing I would say is at least kind of from my point of view and my experiences is they're also looking for ROIs, return on investment, like what's in it for me. Gotcha. And again, not in a bad way, but like what is that tangible outcome? Like what am I going to get from this? Why should I be a mentor? Why should I come work for orientation? So I feel like as professionals, we need to make sure that we're providing that to them in some way to make it look like it's a benefit to them and that we can very easily share what the outcomes are or what that tangible takeaway is for them. So that's one thing I think that's big. And I feel like I've noticed and what I've even learned just in terms of like reading about generations and things like that and trying to stay up to date with what each generation is kind of experiencing or doing is two things. One is they don't hesitate to like leave a review, right? And so you buy something off Amazon, leave it a review, or you aren't, if you're not impressing me, I'll go get this at Target, right? So trying to make sure that they're getting what they need, kind of like what we promised them. I know that saying the word promise probably isn't the right word.
Delivering.
But delivering on what they thought they would be receiving when they picked to come here. And so trying to meet them where they are in terms of what that experience looked like for them. Just so they don't jump ship, right? And be like, this isn't for me. I'm going to leave because I didn't get X, Y, or Z. So I think that's a bigger thing to try to address. But I feel like that's a piece of the students coming in is just, and what I've also read, like sometimes there's not going to be a hesitation to just change their mind and say like, this isn't for me. I'm going to try something else. And then of course the involvement of those parents and supporters, right? So what I've learned at least about like Gen Z, and I know we're kind of probably slowly starting to segue away from Gen Z. I'm sure there'll be a new name for the next generation here pretty quick. But that it's not helicopter parents. It's like we make decisions together. So previously it was the helicopter parents, right? That just like came in and swooped and did the things for their children and made the decisions for their children or the students in their lives. And now I think it's more supporters and any students who might be watching this, right? Hopefully they can feel that, right? That they have that support system that isn't telling them what to do, but jointly they're making decisions. And so hence why our supporter and family member portion of the day, at least for orientation, we want to make sure that family member and supporter is feeling like they can make those decisions kind of collectively with their student versus kind of individually and having them go forth and conquer on their own. So, those are, I guess, a few of the main trends that come to mind when talking about that kind of stuff.
That's really interesting. So I think sometimes just in my experience in working with some students too, I've noticed that idea of like, what's in it for me, the why, which I think is really important, right? It makes us rethink of how we're approaching things, 100%. Right? And I think that's good because it gives some more clarity and structure to some things. Yeah. But what about those students that maybe, and I don't know if there's a perfect answer to this, but just kind of get your perspective on it, that want these things, right? Want to have this type, let's say, type of experience or these needs met, but don't articulate what they need or don't know how to communicate, maybe struggling with that communication aspect. How do we kind of balance that and figure that out? Sure. Without assuming what students need.
So I think, and again, I don't think that this could be a huge piece of the day, or maybe we could try to fashion this in some way, shape, or form. But I think a big piece of that is kind of having the student, if we could, before they come here in August. I mean, it doesn't have to be before they come to orientation, but getting them to think about, what do you want out of your college career?
Yeah.
What do you envision the end goal being?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do all these other things in addition to getting the degree?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we know that some maybe don't, but we also have now already talked about the importance of those things. And so those students who are maybe having a harder time articulating it, even again, if they haven't even thought about it before they got here, which I know is oftentimes probably the case, I think it's just a matter of us as professional staff, maybe again, or faculty, whoever it might be, trying to realize that, right? Like, keep your feelers out there, kind of get some observations, or take observation of the things happening in front of you with students. And maybe you're the person that gives them that nudge. And I know that's not possible with every student who's in that situation.
For sure.
And I don't want it to all rely back on the staff or faculty either. But I do think that there's a piece of that, right? That if you're noticing a student who just seems to be kind of like just kind of plateauing, or even just kind of going through the motions, maybe you can ask them a few questions to just get them engaged and to kind of get them started about what they want, or what they might want to add to their student experience. So, yeah, that's a hard question to answer.
For sure.
But I think a lot of them probably just need that nudge again.
Yeah.
So, and I know our colleagues in the residence life, they do a lot of, trying to do those meaningful engagements with students. And so hoping to, again, not putting it all on them either, but that those RAs or inclusion assistants or whoever it might be noticing that Brandon in the room of 4 is the one that I haven't really connected with, or doesn't seem to be doing X, Y, or Z. Maybe it's as easy as saying, hey, do you want to grab a coffee and let's chat about what you might want to do, right?
Yeah.
So I think, again, not a cookie cutter response to every student, because I think it's going to depend on the student and what their end goal is, which if you're not asking those questions, you might be trying to bark up the wrong tree, and that student might be just fine with doing the bare minimum and getting the degree and leaving. So I think you really need to know where that student is and try to meet them in the middle. Yeah. Probably not an articulate response either to your question.
No, I mean, that's a good one though.
That is a good question, because I'm sure there are plenty of students out there kind of hovering right in that zone right now, where they're just kind of like, I don't really even know. Maybe I want to do something, but I don't know what that something is. So that's a great question. We should talk about that more.
We should talk about
so
that
I don't have
more.
to keep rambling about it right now. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that question too, I think about that stuff a lot. And again, like, I don't have a perfect answer either, right? I think it's sometimes just doing that work, right? Like that idea of that phrase of meeting students where they're at, like, I think sometimes gets tossed around a little bit too much as like a buzz phrase or kind of thing. And the problem is then, maybe some higher up individuals are making assumptions or decisions on what students need, but it's like, when are they actually going in and meeting with students, right? Sitting down with students, engaging with them, especially, if some students maybe don't know how to maybe articulate what they need or how to right now, which is totally normal and okay as well. But how are we actually meeting students where they're at and finding their needs? And I think that comes down to the day-to-day of, again, like, interacting with students, which, again, unfortunately, as we get busier and, time becomes more of a stressor, like, that's harder to do, but also we can make it more of a priority, I think. And
I agree. I think if you give them some free snacks and some free things and have a focus group, you might not get all the students to show up, but if you give them some free snacks and free things, gear, something, you probably could at least get some really good feedback about what that could look like. So again, not the Hail Mary of an answer that we probably need, but
starting point, right?
I agree with you that we can't just think that we know because we were higher ed professionals that we know what's best for students. And I 100%, I feel like I do this way more often than maybe I wouldn't say necessary. I do this a lot because I think it matters, I should say. It's not a bad thing I do this, I don't think. But I constantly am asking students, students in our office, hey, I'm going to do this. Can you come read this? Does this sound like a grown-up, or does this sound not student-y enough, right? Student-y, I'll make it a word. Is this lame? Is this a parent idea? Like, I try to make sure that it's at least speaking the language and making that connection, whatever it might be. Or I just ran an idea by a student the other day with something we were thinking of tweaking for orientation. One of our past mentors, who's now going to graduate and go on to grad school, but and she had a really good perspective on blah blah blah, this or this, right? And so I always have sought the feedback from whether I was in recruitment and enrollment, right, or from in student success with the coaching role, from how we called students or what we put in an email, right? Like all of that, I feel like goes back to trying to make sure that it's in their world and their language, right? This is their world. We're just living in it. So how can we not make that assumption that we're meeting them where they are when maybe we aren't trying our hardest to even know what that means?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could be very powerful and impactful, right? We just got to take action on it, right?
Yeah.
And put it into place.
100%.
Love that.
Yeah.
No, and I think too, making the point you did a little bit earlier on, finding some type of purpose or of what, again, doing that reflective work and asking maybe yourself, like, what do I want out of my experience, right?
Correct.
And finding that, I think is so impactful because, again, everyone's experience is going to be different, right? Different wants and needs. And I think something that we did through the Leadership Institute this year, through Leadership Safari, which I know we've talked about a little bit on the show before. If you're not familiar with it, you can find tons of information on it. But is, we restructured our curriculum, and what we really asked students in a very basic format is to kind of form a sense of purpose, right, or a why statement. And what we found, I think, is that the first day and the first meeting was very general, and that was specific, right? But as they went through the team meetings, which there were 6 of them, they started learning new things and relating it back to that, right? So team meeting 2, for example, was learning a little bit about core values, right, and a growth mindset. So that prompted, like, how are you going to refine that why statement? Now, maybe your core values do influence that, right? Team meeting 5 is learning more about different identities maybe those students hold, and how does that influence maybe how they want their college experience to go, right?
Absolutely.
Something that's very small but that they could put into action outside of that program. And again, these are intended to be a little bit more general as they're starting college, but it could be simple as, like, I want to get involved, right? But now at least 3 organizations on campus to do that, right?
Correct.
And to continue that development and growth. And hopefully that kind of stems that idea of, again, more of that reflective work down the line. That's the intent of it. Hopefully it happens. But I think that was impactful from feedback we saw from students as well. Yeah. Again, asking them a little bit, what do you want out of your experience? And, like, how can we help you get there, right?
Correct.
So.
You made me think of something else. I think a huge piece of, again, not just my role, but from various parts of campus is understanding and even maybe informing students, new students especially, that you likely are not going to be the same person that you were in 4 years when you graduate in a positive way.
Yeah, I would hope not. Right.
Right. Like we're hoping that you've changed and grow and your mindset's changed or your perceptions of different parts of the world have changed. You've grown in a variety of ways, right? And so I think checking in with asking that question right from the get-go is great because it gives them a starting point of saying, what do you want? What are your values currently? And, like, how do you want these experiences to tie in back to those? But then a year or 2 down the line, they might have had this awesome or amazing experience that has drastically changed their trajectory of where they're heading, or, again, maybe their career path, or just their overall view on X, Y, or Z in the world, right? And I think about that a lot with myself. So, like, when you just said that, I was thinking about even my own undergrad experience where I told you I came from a very small rural town, small town America, pretty homogenous in terms of a white lower middle class area, right? So, like, my experience coming to college, again, I knew what I wanted because I was the third of I had 2 older sisters who already went to college before me. So I kind of knew, right? But I didn't really know. And so, funny enough, I was the, like, overly involved student in all the things in high school, and then came to college and kind of was like, I literally remember saying this, which is kind of funny. I have a vivid memory of saying, like, I'm kind of over leadershiping. Like, I've done that for a minute. And so I kind of took a step back when I first came in.
Gotcha. Interesting.
And I think that some students might do something similar because, again, for example, was, big fish, small pond. And then you completely flip the switch and it's small fish, large pond.
Right.
And which to me, I wasn't really overly mad about. I kind of liked being in a small town, like, everyone knows you, and kind of had that expectation, right? That, like, Erin's going to do these things and Erin's going to be in these things. Where, like, here it was like no one cared. Yeah. So for me, it was a completely different switch, and then I missed it, right? Yeah. And then I started getting back involved, and my later in my freshman year, sophomore year, and finding like, I do like that. I really enjoy extracurricular things that aren't just going to class. And it's not like I wasn't going to things, but I didn't really join a club officially until, later my freshman year, really probably sophomore year, because I just was kind of taking a pause and kind of deciding, like, answering that question, like, what do I want out of this college experience? Do I want to kind of go under the radar now? Because I can easily in this world of thousands of students and not my class of 80, right? Or do I want to experience all these great things that this place has to offer? So thankfully, I landed on the latter and realized I still wanted that to be a piece of my experience, and clearly was helpful in terms of graduate school and then, of course, getting a job because I get to put it all on a resume after the fact. I could have been student B in my example earlier with really good grades, but not a lot to show for it, right? And I thankfully realized I could be student A and have good grades, but also some stuff to show for it. So I just think about my own experience in that, and I feel like there's got to be students similar. So I feel like asking that question needs to happen on more than one occasion, or engaging it with that piece is important because it's going to change, right?
100%.
It's going to change for all the students, again, whether they come in, hit the ground running, or like me, take a pause and then kind of reset. So I don't know. I don't know all the answers, obviously, but just makes me think about my own experience.
I mean, that's really valuable, I think, to share, because there's for sure probably viewers maybe going through that similar transition, maybe the opposite, but just even having that perspective of, like, even the people that were maybe really involved, sometimes you need to take a step back or build that, or find that self-awareness. Like, I do really enjoy this, or maybe not, right? Maybe there's people out there that were involved and then kind of maybe take a step back, and that's totally normal and okay too. And then there's students, I think, more like my kind of self that weren't really involved or did one or two things in high school and then became a little bit more involved later on. But again, for me, that was later on in college, my senior year of undergrad, not even the beginning half. So everyone's at their own journey, right? At their own pace. And there's no perfect answer, but it's just finding what works best for you and things like that. But you have to make part of that effort, right? It starts with you.
It's on the student, a huge piece of it, but I do think, staff, faculty, other students can obviously play a role in it. But but are we giving those students a chance to help with their identity development or the shifts that are happening, right, with their development? And that's where I feel like, maybe there are some more opportunities, even at the orientation level. I mean, it literally, as we're talking, like, ooh, what could we do to help facilitate this a little bit more during the day, as if there's not already enough things happening. But
for sure.
Add it to the list.
We'll work it in.
We'll work it in.
What I'm hearing is, like, this year's orientation for new students is going to be, like, the most epic one yet. So
you
should apply actually to be a mentor, because you could be a part of that.
It probably is the best choice you'll ever make. I hope so. Yeah. We'll take all the friends. Yes.
All the friends. Awesome. All right. I always love to ask this one, but what's your favorite leadership approach or leadership style to utilize?
Sure. So I kind of would say, the first one I would say adaptive. Like, I feel whether that has been in my current role now or any previous role, or just even, again, in a student group, whatever leadership type of role I have been serving in, that adaptive leadership piece of, being able to anticipate needs, right? I just talked about students change, right? Keeping up to date with what their needs are, who they are, who's coming into college now versus 5 years ago. And implementing changes. Obviously, being adaptive is and flexible every day. I feel like that's something that I'm doing. And then just anticipating what needs to happen. I feel like that's a huge piece of it. And then being able to put in plans into work and, like, future plans. So I would say 98% of the day or time, I feel like I'm at work, I am thinking of different ways to adapt and approach, whether, again, it's a small task that's happening within my world of orientation, or just overall in the Office of Student Success. For those that don't know, orientation is based off of in the Office of Student Success at CMU. And so I think everyone benefits when you're being led by someone who is able to do that. To anticipate the change, and then to feel like you can make the change and implement that for the better, and to have that flexibility. So, you worked with me this past summer that the day doesn't always go the way you want it to go. And again, it might be a minor thing that you need to adjust, or it could be a major thing, right? And so we had to make plenty of adjustments during the planning phases, and then literally during the actual, while the train was going down the track. And so I think to be an effective leader, it should be a priority for anyone to have that kind of mindset all the time. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that I am a perfect leader and or supervisor and or runner of orientation, right? Like, I would never claim that, but I do think that having at least the ability and that mindset to lead in that way that I know that even the staff that I have working for me, that I can make sure that I'm also trying to teach them, hey, this doesn't go how you want it, or like, we can't control this, right? Like sphere of influence type of concept, right? Like you need to be adaptive to know that like that's just something that we can't maybe budge, even though we think that it should change. So I try to make sure that my staff feels that way, both professional staff and student staff, but also from my own everyday. Like, I feel like I'm also constantly trying to challenge myself with new ways to see things or to do things, which I think helps in multiple ways. So adaptive leadership, I feel like it's a good one to kind of base many of your leadership experiences off of, or mine at least. The other one is, and I feel like is formal, but just like modeling, right? Modeling leadership, modeling the way, all those different kind of buzzwords. I before I worked in higher ed, I worked at Target, like as a leadership at Target, as management. And what I really liked, retail was not for Erin. No, thank you. But I learned a lot, right? Like the experience taught me a lot. My boss was fantastic. Loved my boss. I just hated retail. It was not for me. But being the person I am, I wasn't just going to go in and not do a good job. Like I hold those higher expectations for myself. So I still took it as a chance to like learn and grow. One of the things that I really thought was valuable was when you were the leadership or the day, right? They called it leader on duty, or LOD. They had a lot of acronyms too, by the way, not just here.
Everywhere.
They're everywhere, yes. And so if you were the leader on duty or the LOD, you, or really just in general, if you were just working that day with multiple other executive team leaders, like if we needed carts, like you went out to the parking lot and got yourself some damn carts. Like there wasn't a question. Like we all can do this. It doesn't just have to be like the cart person that does this. So when it's December 21st and there's hundreds of people in the store, or December 23rd, and there are no carts, they're all in the store, or there are no carts in the store, they're all out in the parking lot, we all chip in and do it, right? So I always think about that. Like that's a pretty, what we would say, a basic entry level, like not the grown up leadership person's role, right? To do something like that. But why not? So I really valued that was something that was like, nope, if we need to do this, we're all going to do this. And that I think I've kind of carried with me. And all of that's a very minor, I feel like, example, but really, if you think about it, it really is a big one. It kind of makes a pretty profound statement on how they viewed leadership. And so when I came into higher ed, or like I think just in general, like I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do, was the point I was just trying to make. And so I feel like I am trying to do that, probably sometimes to a fault, to where I probably need to delegate more, right? And not try to take on everything on my own. But even for student mentors, right? I'm not going to tell a student in terms of service, like, I expect you to walk that student from this building to this building halfway across campus if they need you to, if I wouldn't myself be willing to do that, or wouldn't do that if they couldn't. So just modeling, trying to set the example, and have students learn from at least hopefully a positive couple things or here or there that they've picked up from me for their own leadership. So modeling, not asking folks to do something that I'm not willing to do, and then of course, adapting to change and anticipating needs. So that's my long-winded answer to that one. That was a long answer.
I like that though. I mean, like the idea of modeling the way, right? And not asking someone to do something that you wouldn't be comfortable doing yourself, kind of thing. Like I think that's such an important piece to leadership. But also, even I think your example highlighted that, like as a leader, you're jumping in with your people, right? You're supporting them, but you're doing the work too, right? The modeling the way. I think that's such a big piece to that work. And I think sometimes maybe, whether we have a lot going on and I'm on our plate as leader, right? Sometimes maybe we forget about, but I think it goes back to that again, is like being there for your team in the moment and doing that work together. And I think that's super critical.
Absolutely.
And I think it makes a better experience for all, right? And again, like modeling the way, right? And then you see those employees start to maybe embrace that a little bit more, right? In their own leadership development.
Correct.
And it kind of creates that positive cycle or change.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's the goal, at least.
For sure.
Yes.
So
that's my end goal.
That's awesome. All right, we'll kind of segue into our next question here. How can college students effectively manage their time and strike a balance between academics, those extracurricular or co-curricular programs or activities, and their personal life?
Sure thing. So I kind of mentioned this earlier. I don't think you need to do everything at once. We don't need to continue to say like how important it is to get involved and do the things. But to stay organized, to stay balanced, to stay, healthy, physically, mentally, all those socially, all those different areas of your life. I think a big piece of it, as corny as it is to a couple things. One, have like an accountability partner of some kind, whether that's a mentor, your safari guide, your orientation mentor, whoever it might be, some other student, maybe it's your roommate, right? Someone that also you can maybe be each other's, one another's accountability partner. But I think that's it seems kind of cheesy, but like, if I know that I have a standing date to go study with you, Brandon, on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4, and I don't show up, I hope that, Brandon, you would text me and be like, where are you?
Right.
Or whatever form of communication that you would choose to use, because that is helpful, right? That you can kind of set that routine. So that's the other piece I was going to say. I have said this before, and I will preach it again. Yes, transitioning to college is a huge one of the biggest transitions that any student will ever make from high school to college, again, if you're coming fresh out. But even if you're transitioning from another institution, it's still a pretty big transition to learn. What I think students need to remember when they're starting college, or even current students need to remember, is that in theory, if you think about it, y'all are transitioning 2 to 3 times a year in a different way, right? So you start a fall semester. It's 16 weeks of your life where maybe by week 3 or 4, you've developed a pretty solid routine, which is the other part of that transition that I really hound. Like your schoolwork week should be a 40-hour week, like you're a professional person working. So however that looks for you, whether you plot in the study time and classes and your extracurriculars, like try to make it be like a full-time job, because then you'll set a routine. So I know that on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, I do this and this, at this time, this time, and then Tuesdays, Thursdays, whatever. So make a routine out of it for, 1 to 16 weeks. Hopefully you start around week 2 or 3 or 4 where you kind of feel like you have that started, because I think it takes 21 days to make a habit, right? Isn't that the expression?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you can cite my source, Google it later, people watching. Yeah. But it takes, let's say 3 weeks to make a habit. So hopefully you're doing that, and then it just becomes second nature. But the bad joke in all of this is that in however long, in 16 weeks, regardless of when you got that routine down, you're literally going to take a break from it and then reset again in a couple weeks when you start the spring semester. And then you're literally kind of starting from scratch. And then if you take summer classes, you're doing that again. Yeah. Or if you're working a busy summer schedule, right? However, whatever your summer looks like. So you're just kind of, for 4 years, give or take, you are on a constant loop of resetting and transitioning. Reset, transition, reset, transition, reset. Like it's kind of a sad way to look at it, but it's realistic. And I always claim to be a realist. So I think if you set that foundation of making that routine and knowing what that looks like for you from early on, from the get-go, that obviously, although you are transitioning on a constant for multiple years of your life, that you at least have those basic skills to be able to get you there and to do it effectively each time it happens, multiple times a year, right? So I don't think students probably think about that.
No, I've never really realized that. That's fascinating. I was about to say that.
It's a pretty big thing to think about, right?
Yeah.
Like you're literally kind of hitting reset every 16 weeks of your life for multiple years.
For sure.
Not in all, right? Like your student group, if you're in the student group, it's probably going to be pretty similar. But your classes and your schedule, like it's literally doing, you're never going to have the same, it's probably very unlikely for you to have the same exact schedule in terms of times, the days of the week your classes are, all the things, right? Yeah. It's just not possible. And I don't think students think about it in that bigger sense, that you have to literally train your brain and your body and your whole self to like adapt to that and to transition multiple times a year. So I think in terms of staying organized, to actually answer now your question, you need to know have those skills and build them early, whether that is you have apps that help you stay organized, or that accountability partner that helps you to keep that routine that you've developed. You literally we have a grid still. I have it, and from the coaching era, that's literally like the grid of time from 7 a.m. till midnight, Monday through Friday, where you could literally like block out the hours, right? So similar to like a Google Calendar. Get the Outlook app, right? You can use the calendaring. There are lots of apps that actually send you notifications that are more study-based, or academics-based, I should say. I think it's still an app. So again, you can Google it later, students or people watching. My Study Life was one that actually a student recommended to one of my former success coaches that we talked about for a while after, because it lets you, it makes you kind of go through and make a routine. So you can plot out all your tests and your quizzes and your assignments and everything, and when your classes are, and the app will send you notifications like, in 2 days, Brandon, you have a quiz in history 100 or whatever. So you can remember to study and do what you need to do, or write the paper or whatever the assignment might be. But what I like about that app, or again, if there's something similar, I'm sure there's lots, but that was one that comes to mind, is it would force you, Brandon, to go through your syllabus for every single class and like plot I'm typing, actually like enter in what those things were. So in another coaching type of model is like, you have to sometimes see things 2 or 3 times for it to be, comprehended and for you to digest it. And so you see it the first time, you go through that calendar in your syllabus, and then kind of a second time you're going through and you're typing it into this app, right? And so you already know that week 14 you had that thing because 3 weeks ago you typed it, right? Well, now it's week 11, so you know that thing's coming up, but then you're still going to get that help from the app to like notify you of those things. So I think it's helpful because it forces students to go through and make that routine and like figure out what their life's going to be like. So it all obviously goes together from just your actual overall routine of when you're studying, when's class, when's your extracurriculars, plugging all those things in. But then like the specifics is like apps, Outlook, accountability partners, all those different things and tools to, again, get you through that 16 weeks and then reset that button 16 weeks later.
I mean, that was awesome, those resources. I think we'll be able to maybe link a couple of those down in the description eventually. But
I hope that app's still a thing. I hope it's still a thing.
That's really cool. I'm sure if it's not, there's probably something
like
similar to
100%.
that. My mind went to like just now. I'm gonna have to do some reflective work on this, thinking about like maybe what my most productive semester was before, and like maybe revisiting that schedule and like why that worked. Because I think recall even stuff like sometimes maybe obviously things different moods change, but like being more productive in certain areas of my college undergrad experience versus others. So maybe that did have to do with maybe a routine that fits better for me that I just haven't really thought about in that way. That was a really interesting point.
Some people really aren't morning people.
Yeah,
some people really aren't night people.
Yeah.
Like that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Some people's brains literally will work better or differently at certain points in the day. We could talk those types of resources. Like people that need to know what kind of learner that they are, which I feel like some people don't know. Are you a visual? Are you kinesthetic? Are you audio or an audio or auditory learner? So like
a blend,
a blend. Oh, most people are a blend.
Yeah.
I'm visual kinesthetic, 100%. And so you can take those types of assessments for free on the internet. I'm sure we have one on our website, and you can. At least that's a starting point for some too, to even be successful in a class. If you have a Psych 100 and it's straight lecture and you're a visual learner or kinesthetic learner, what things are you going to do to like make that change, right? Or like to supplement, to be able to get to learn that material, because you probably aren't going to get it just from that, literally hearing it in a lecture. And so there's a really cool way to make flashcards that folks don't even know. Is like this type of flashcard, right?
Yeah.
Definition, what it is like not the way your brain works. So, we talk a lot about old school flashcards, right? And so I know that Quizlet and all those cool apps exist, and 100% I would recommend folks to use whatever works for them. But yeah, there's so many pieces of the puzzle. Like you said, like what made that semester the most effective? Yeah, was it because it was mostly afternoon stuff or night stuff or morning stuff, whatever worked best for you? Or were you using different tools, or were your professors that semester all randomly meeting your needs as a student in terms of how you learn, right? I think there's so many pieces that go into it. The problematic thing is like, in 16 weeks it's going to change again, and you're going to have to start over. So, but I think there's a lot that would go into that. But if you can at least try to start to reflect, I think that's a good place to start.
For sure. Yeah. Bring in maybe some of those things that work and infusing them with what you have to do anyways, right?
Correct.
Like so.
You're here, you got to do it.
Right,
so let's figure out how to make it best.
Way. Exactly.
Exactly.
Great resource too, real quick. If you're looking to kind of develop habits better, Atomic Habits, great book. Highly suggest you pick that up, read that. Have you read that one?
No, I have not.
Super good.
Add it
super
to the
good.
list.
We read that over here, or most of us in our office. And it was really, really good. So
good to know.
Anyways.
They didn't talk about how many days it takes to make a habit in Atomic Habits?
Honestly, I don't remember. I think it was more like
missed opportunity.
The skills. Like there's some deeper dives into habits.
Okay. So, I'm curious.
I think it kind of debunked that myth. Right?
Oh, darn it.
In the intro, but we'll see.
Darn it. Cite my source.
Oh, you have that right now? You're reading that? Money like that. Can you show that to the camera real quick? Atomic Habits. Melo just picked it up. Legend,
Thank you, Melo.
Great read.
Okay. Well, shoot. Now I feel like a fraud.
Yeah?
Don't Google it. Don't Google how many days it takes to make a habit.
It's just newer research on habits,
I love that. I mean, that probably is a very old. I'm sure that's I heard that when I was a young person, and
I think like
not
10,000
young.
hours to mass or something. I don't know if that's accurate.
Who
Right? How do we
knows?
measure that?
But the point is, whether what I just said is a fraud or not,
right.
the
Habits
point
are
is
important.
you need to make a routine.
Yes.
So maybe
Yes.
that'll take Melo 2 days. Maybe it'll take you 2 weeks. Maybe it'll take me 14, or that's the same as 2 weeks. Maybe it'll take me 21 days, like I said earlier, right? Like, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but that was the point. So don't cite my source. Don't Google it from earlier. Read this book instead.
Yeah. Or maybe it does take 21 days for Erin, right? That's what she said. You're speaking
Maybe,
truth, right?
Maybe I'm speaking my truth. I don't know. I feel like it maybe takes less time. I don't know.
Who knows?
21 days seems like a long time.
It is a long time.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we should write our own book.
Yeah, we should maybe
some
run a
experiments.
test. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, who knows? Focus group.
Let's do it.
We'll do it.
That's awesome. All right. So there can be a ton to do and engage in during college. What strategies can students use to explore their passions and interests?
Sure. This is a pretty basic place to start with this, but I'm thinking again with my own experience, and I love telling or recommending to students to ask other students what their majors are. I think it's a great place to start, only because I know you're like, that's so dorky and lame. But here's why. There, as an incoming student, whether again you're a freshman or maybe even a transfer, you don't know, which is why we did some of the career exploration stuff at orientation this year. You don't know all the things that exist here, right? You come in with a very tunnel vision, no fault of your own. It's fine. That's just kind of how you're prepared to come to college. And I feel like the world is a bigger place now than when I was a student. I don't disagree with the fact that students nowadays do have a lot more access to like worldly things and probably a little bit more awareness of like all the different jobs that exist, and where your career or where you could go in your life. But when you ask students what their major is or their minor is or both, it could literally open up a door for you to not even know that this XYZ major existed on campus. That literally happened to me. And so that's why I think when you're involved in a couple groups, or you're talking to your RA, or you're just eating dinner with your roommates, you might know what their majors are, what they're intending to major in, but at least it opens up doors. Maybe they learned something from someone else, right? And so I know it seems cheesy and lame, so you can laugh at me later, but I do think it is a way for students to kind of learn about all the things that there are here that might interest them, or that might be of interest, at least, to be like, oh, I want to learn more about that, like scratch the surface a little. The other piece of that is, which I mentioned earlier, and now I lost my train of thought, was something about, I'm going to think of it. But anyway, what you don't like. Yeah. Literally, what don't you like to do? Do you not like to sit still? Are you not a good sitter? Do you not like big groups and huge social interactions? Are you more of a small group person? Do you like to be, do you like gaming? Like, right? What don't you like? Get that, then helps you hopefully narrow down the list. Because as I said earlier, I personally don't think it matters if what you're engaging in and getting yourself involved in has a direct tie-in to your major or your future career. I don't think that it matters as much as long as you're getting something and can pull the different skills you're getting from that experience out of it and putting it on paper, or being able to articulate something later on when you're having a job interview, or on your LinkedIn, or whatever cool thing will exist in the next 5 years of life. And so that's where I think they need to start, is just start asking the questions, right? Like, hey, I really like to cook. Is there something that we can, is there a club for that, right? We all know how easy it is to start a club around here too. If there's not, start one. Right. So I think it's probably not, it might not be the answer you're looking for, but I think it honestly just starts again kind of with that student being able to have some reflection and saying, what don't I like? And then being hopefully willing, or at least feeling confident enough to start asking questions and engaging with others to get a sense of what already exists. Maybe that's just doing some exploring on Engage Central, right? Like search, keyword search if certain clubs exist. But I think that each student, it's in their best interest and it's worthwhile for them to find a niche thing, right? That they really want to do, that is a passion or is a high interest area, because it will really, it'll add so much more and enrich their experience so much more. So, find what you don't like, ask some questions, ask what their major and minor are, see what they're involved in, and go from there. Yeah. Probably not the best answer, but
no, I think that was a great answer.
That's what I got for that.
We've talked a lot about on the show in different capacities. I think it's so important is developing that sense of self-awareness, right? Like knowing yourself, what helps you be the best version of yourself, what things you don't like. I think there's a lot of value in that, tapping into those things. But also, right, keep track of those things, but also those things can change too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just because, exactly. Just because you didn't like one thing,
Correct.
6 years ago, maybe that's, you enjoy it now. Most of the time, the things you don't like, you probably still won't like, right? But
correct.
There's a lot of value though that can be found in that too. Again, like maybe you thought you wanted to be in that field, right? And you like really didn't like the class. I think a big one too is if you're looking to explore in different majors, is to take the entry level intro class, right?
Yes.
Because it's gonna get that broad overview of many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you find something specific in there that you didn't know existed again, or maybe you just like, that's not for me, right?
Right. Maybe when you don't like kids in bulk.
Exactly. There you go, right?
From working at a daycare.
But then you find out you really like working with college students.
Correct.
There you go.
Win-win.
100%.
Yes. So I think it's just getting yourself out there, which I know is big too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to self-reflect and realize that. But I know a large piece of that is also kind of taking the risks, or maybe leaving your room and stepping out of your comfort zone. So that I'm very aware of, but I do think it's the step in the right direction. So take a buddy. Right?
Yes,
go with someone to the thing.
That
you don't have to go by
accountability
yourself.
partner you just made.
Yeah,
right?
take your accountability partner. We'll start calling it your AP to be super cool. Make another acronym out of it. I'm kidding. That's super dorky. Don't do that. But yeah, you can definitely make that hopefully a little easier on yourself if you just even if they could care less, just bring them along and then promise them that you'll buy them something with your flex, right? Like whatever. Buy them a Starbucks coffee on your way, and then at least they can come with you for that kind of moral support while you're there, and then test it out and see how it goes.
That's awesome.
I know. There you go. Just get some free Starbucks out of it.
Yeah, I touched upon we talked about this a little bit, but what are some other maybe valuable life skills, or maybe some of those, human skills? I think Simon Sinek said that instead of soft skills. I like that better.
Yeah.
Human skills, right? Like we talked about, like problem solving,
Fair.
Leadership, communication, those things.
Yep.
How can they develop those during college? And also how will they benefit them in the future? These skills.
I will mention the communication skills thing again. And I would say that you're willing to ask for that type of feedback.
Okay.
I'm assuming most of the time in any type of class that you're obviously writing in, especially papers or essays, things of that nature, that you are getting that feedback naturally as part of that process, right, from your faculty member. But in terms of public speaking, right, we now have the Presentation Skills Center again on campus. So did you know that one of the top fears in life is public speaking, like over death and other random things? So thankfully I was not. I have the opposite of that, which is very nice, and I'll # blessed. But I also know that most students don't love that. So being able to develop that, I think, is a big one. And you can utilize the Presentation Skills Center because you're not just going to be given speeches in speech class, right? So we know that that's going to be part of other classes requirements / potential future jobs, right? But you have to present to a group, or maybe you're going to a professional conference and you're different in your industry that you're in, whatever it might be. So presentation skills, writing skills, all of that is big to me. So I would say making sure you're looking for or taking advantage of the time while you're in college where you're getting all this feedback in your writing, that you're actually taking it to heart. Maybe you go to the writing center and utilize that as well. Presentation skills and the writing center are big ones. But I think communication is huge because it represents you in so many different ways, in my opinion, right? So especially in our world of electronic communication, so much can be misinterpreted or misconstrued or not relayed, maybe relayed in the right way that you wanted it to. And so really being able to construct messages or communicate effectively in the way that you want the person reading it to come across is important. And so, I think honing those skills while you're in college and taking advantage of all the times that you get that feedback from people, it really makes a big difference. So that one, big one for me. I already talked about quite a few other ones, adaptability and change, and open-mindedness, I feel like, is probably the next one I would touch on, which is kind of like flexibility, but not really at all, in lots of different ways. And so, again, coming from where I grew up and coming to college, it was a huge transition in a very positive way to being more open-minded to the world that I didn't really experience in the same way in my hometown as I did here at CMU. And I'm really thankful for that and the opportunities that I got to grow and learn in that. And so folks can do that in a variety of ways, right? It might just be opening up to something new that you never experienced before, or willing to take more risks, or just at least hearing other people's thoughts and being a better listener, right, than what you were before. So open-mindedness, big one. I think that goes a long way. Being a good listener, I would add that to the list. Have you ever met someone who's a terrible listener?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it's not a lot of fun.
No.
I wouldn't tell you that I'm the best listener, but I have self-reflected enough to
Same.
know that I have to actively make sure, because my brain is always going a mile a
Same
minute,
here. Yeah.
that
Gotta really
I am
work on it.
actively listening to when a person is talking. Unless I really don't care what they have to say sometimes, which just sometimes still happens in life, right?
Yeah.
No one's perfect. But I think that when you're a really good listener, people notice that, and I think it goes a long way and can like develop then into what their impression of you, right, is from the get-go, right, if it's a first encounter or even later in life. And so I can name to you some people in my life that I would say some of the best listeners, right, that I've ever met, which is really cool when you can like really pinpoint that in someone, because it doesn't exist in everyone. And so I think that's a really valuable skill set to carry with you, and it is a part of being open-minded, right, where you have to like at least give the person the chance to talk. But I also mean bigger picture, like just literally listening to someone when they're talking and paying attention and giving them that time that they deserve, as you would also hope that they would give you. So I feel like I've touched on most of the things. See if I forgot any of the major ones. Transferable skills. My big one, I guess another one for me, I talked about service, which can be applied to many industries, right, depending on what you go into. So I really do think that high service is important to me. Doesn't mean it has to be important to everyone. But in terms of a transferable skill, accountability is a big one for me. I get very disappointed and very frustrated at times when folks around me that might exhibit very little accountability. I think the ability to accept and receive feedback is huge. And if part of that receiving feedback means that you need to then have some accountability to say like, yeah, that was not great. What I just didn't go the way I wanted it to, whether that was like a personal decision that you made or like a part of the orientation day that didn't go great. And like being able to step back and be like, yeah, you're right. And owning that you maybe made a mistake or an error in judgment or whatever it might be. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that we are probably both surrounded by, whether it be in your personal life or work life or wherever you are, that don't operate under that same lens.
Definitely.
And I didn't mention this earlier about when you talked about my style of leadership, but part of the adaptability piece, I think, is being able to receive that feedback too. And I think that kind of goes with accountability, right? Like if someone's giving you this feedback, what are you going to do with it? Right. If you just let it sit there on a table like a book collecting dust, then cool, that was a waste of their time and you didn't do anything with it to help better, whether again, in my role, the students' impact, whatever it might be. And so I think accountability and learning how to gracefully accept feedback, and even if it doesn't involve feedback and no one even told you anything, but you just need to admit that you maybe didn't do something the right way or said the wrong thing or whatever, is huge because it shows that you're human. It shows that you hopefully are learning from said mistake and or thing that you just did that you shouldn't have done, and that you're willing to grow from it, right? And so I have admitted multiple times throughout my career that I didn't do something great, and I will take accountability for when something went wrong. I actually had a colleague once that was like, literally emailed me back when I admitted something was wrong, that I messed up. And it wasn't a huge thing. I don't even remember what it was. Like that's how probably minor it was. But this person was like, why did you do that? Why did you didn't have to do that. And I was like, sure I did. Like, I'm not going to not say that it was my fault that I did that.
It didn't happen, right?
Yeah. I thought I was very perplexed by that. Like, that's interesting. Yeah. So if this would have been reversed, you wouldn't have, right? And exactly. So that one I carry with me, even though I don't remember the exact thing, but it made me think a little bit differently, right, about that person moving forward with life. So I don't know, accountability to me, huge. Another one I would say, add it to your list, like learn how to get the feedback, accept it, make the change, be able to say you're sorry if that needs to be involved or apologize, and then literally move on and grow from it. Done. And
accountability is everything, but something that can easily, I think for sometimes it's challenging to do, and we might not want to do that, right? We made a mistake, especially if it's impacted people in a 100%. Negative way. But I mean, could you imagine if everyone was a little bit more accountable in their life, how different things would be?
Really? I really can't imagine. I know, right? It would be wonderful.
For sure. Like, it's amazing. You touched upon feedback a lot too, and I just had one one question specifically on that because that is so important.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, right, sometimes giving and receiving feedback can be difficult.
Oh, yes.
Right, challenging.
Unless it's an anonymous
right,
survey.
Exactly. That is true.
And then
right.
everyone really
behind the
opens up.
screen, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Always, right? And especially too, I mean, part of giving feedback is you have to know that person you're really relating to, right? Like
Yeah.
how they best receive it. But
Correct.
what are some tools maybe for people out there to maybe be more open to receiving that feedback? I know there's always things like, oh, like, we need to look at feedback as a gift, right? And things like that, which are great. But like, what are some actual things people can do to maybe work on that? Because we don't always want to be criticized, right?
Sure.
And it also does fall in the delivery, I think, of feedback as
Absolutely.
well. But maybe are there any tools or strategies that we can also maybe exercise to maybe be more open to receiving feedback? Because sometimes it's hard to hear.
Oh, 100%. I'm not saying it's easy ever.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear the feedback.
No,
I try to my best to
for sure.
listen. Every year at the end of orientation, we have a feedback session with our colleagues, mostly the group that we work with closely, our academic advising colleagues. And they have a huge portion of the day. And so sometimes it's super hard for me to listen and not like
You're defensive, yeah.
want to immediately jump on but or this and why. And sometimes it's not. It really depends on what it is, right? I feel like the things that hurt more and want me to have the gut reaction to defend it right immediately are obviously the things that I, Erin Smith-Gaken, am 100% responsible for and or like made that decision. And I know that it was me that like, for whatever reason,
Right.
that they have this feedback.
Kind of touching upon feedback, I think oftentimes people may struggle with kind of receiving that or being open to that.
Sure.
And obviously feedback does come from like the delivery, right? It depends on the situation, and delivering feedback can be difficult too. But are there any tools or strategies or tips that people can utilize to maybe being more open to feedback?
Sure. So yeah, no one wants the feedback, right? No, I don't want to hear the bad things or the constructive criticism, even if it's that. But I do think that there are things I know when I receive feedback. I feel like I can pinpoint usually what makes me feel like I want to have that gut reaction and response to defend whatever it is, versus things that kind of I can let roll off my back a little more. So at the end of each orientation season, we have a feedback session or two for our campus partners in academic advising. They have a big portion of the day, and I can usually very often find myself getting more feeling very more attacked or getting that feedback, receiving it is harder when I know it was a decision that I, Erin Smith-Gaken, made, right? Like myself made this decision that made this harder for you, or maybe you saw it being harder for a student or whatever the situation was. Where if it was more of the collective, this was kind of a group decision, or like we all decided this and this is just something that you want to change, or like just an update, clearly, right, that's obviously a lot less of a blow to your ego or to your confidence or to you, however you want to receive that. So in that, being able to, I think, at least notice that or know that about yourself, or I at least know that about myself, is one, trying to listen to really hear what they're saying. And what even though I'm going to tell you, I don't always do effectively, but what I try really hard to do is still try to tell myself, because in this specific instance, right, when I'm talking about feedback in this session with these staff members or peers, is like, it's still probably not being directed at me, Erin Smith-Gaken, right? Like, it was just like, we didn't like XYZ thing, or this didn't work out the way we wanted it to. And so trying to take at least a step back from it being, yes, it was my decision or my change that I made or implemented, but it's not them attacking me. They just didn't like the thing. So I think if folks can try to separate themselves from the decision maker or the person that did the thing, and knowing that whoever's giving you that feedback is hopefully not attacking you, especially again in that instance where it's more of a process that they're attacking, or giving feedback. Attacking sounds so terrible. That they're giving feedback about. Sometimes it feels like an attack though, right?
Sure.
So that naturally can come to your brain. So I know that's not every time though, right? So that's when feedback is about a process or something that you've implemented, not to you.
Right.
Where it's like, Erin, you need to be a better listener. Erin, you need to be more accountable, right? Whatever. If it really is something about you, the way you're behaving and acting, I honestly don't know if I have a perfect answer to your question. I mean, again, no one probably does, but I try to as I think you've already said a little bit, try to take it as a growth opportunity. I do claim, and I'm not lying when I say I am open to feedback, because I do want to be the best version of me for people around me, right? Whether that's personal life or work life or students, my staff, whoever it is. I don't want something that I'm doing to cause someone else angst or hurt, right? Like, I think most humans have that probably. Generally, I feel like how most people operate.
Yeah.
And so I guess if you can try to look at it in that way, or I try to look at it in that sense, that it's just meant to help me be better. And again, some people are terrible at giving the feedback, so of course it's a lot harder if it's being delivered, like you said, in a very not great way. But if it is delivered in a constructive, meaningful, from a place of care, versus a place of attacking, right? Then I think it is a lot easier to kind of embrace it and say, okay, yep, this, and this. And so I know that doesn't change everyone's ability to accept change or accept feedback in an easier way. It's never going to be easy for anyone. Even if you read all the books and, learn all the things, I don't think that's going to ever be something that anyone wants to do, deliver the feedback. Maybe some people want to deliver the feedback, but receiving it for sure is I think it will be hard for most people always. So I don't think you can ever be okay with it 100%. It's just kind of learning to deal with it as you can. So I also am someone who thrives off of that positive feedback, right? So as an Enneagram 3,
that's me too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
If you've taken the Enneagram, if you haven't, you should. Super fun. And it really does help you to learn a lot about yourself. So as an Enneagram 3, I very much know that I need that kind of affirmation, or to know that like someone is giving me praise that I did a good job. It doesn't need to be like bells and whistles and a party, but like it's not even telling me I did a good job, just the recognition that I did the job. Like it not being a thankless job at all, right? And so sometimes that is hard. And sometimes a role that can be thankless, right? Like run the orientation, moving on, right? And so it can be a challenge, but then I just have to look to find that kind of affirmation in other ways, right? And so I definitely feel like I have enough of that figured out in my life at my blank years of age that I am, that I've kind of been able to develop that skill to know, okay, I am not getting it here, but I know I can get it from here, and that's fine. As an Enneagram 3, you also probably know too that the biggest fear is like being worthless.
Yeah.
So I feel like, well, if someone's giving me the feedback, at least then I can make myself not be like, okay, I'll make that change because I don't want this to feel useless to them. So I think just knowing about yourself and growing and learning and knowing how you receive feedback is a big deal. Like at least that can help you then to, I think, receive it if you know the best way for you to receive it. So, yeah.
Awesome. That was a great answer to that question.
Was it? I don't know. I feel like I rambled for a minute.
I think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of pieces of knowledge in there. Some nuggets of knowledge.
Are there nuggets? Yeah. Well, take a nugget or two.
Like a 20 piece maybe.
Take maybe some ranch with it. I don't know.
That's your vibe.
It's my vibe. Yeah. Give me the ranch.
Give me the ranch. So you have an unlimited budget, we'll say. Just pretend.
Okay. Wow. So, that's a fascinating thought.
Right? So let's say you have an unlimited budget to put together an orientation program for students.
Whew.
What are you creating and why?
Oh my gosh, this is a hard question to answer like question, right now. I'm not prepared for this one. So back in the day, literally the year that before I came to CMU, which was a minute ago, for the record, you can Google that later also. We had 2-day orientations, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And students stayed the night. But it was a way to, I think, there were some benefits to that, right? Obviously, it's a lot more work for the staff. It would be a lot more logistics and planning and all the things. Working with campus partners, right, to have them stay in a residence hall for the night and all the things. So, but I do think that there could be some value as we're talking about students belonging and feeling connected, as much as we try really hard to make that a priority in an 8-hour day. I know that there could potentially be some more meaningful things like at night we could do that I think could help to continue that piece of the experience, where there are some things that we just have to talk about orientation that might not be as engaging, right, as other things. But that extra nighttime and that whole extra day, I think, could have us kind of segue a little bit away from the content and the things, and to, again, maybe being more of that engagement piece, or just extra things in the day that we just can't do.
Right.
So I can't believe I said that out loud, actually, but I would say I think a 2-day orientation could have some value, and that would obviously be, if budgetary, that would cost a lot more for us to do that. It's more food, it's, again, lodging, all the things. I feel like I would like to implement, like we have the online platform, right? Or those new lessons that I implemented this year for the first time, which went fine. They actually were really pleased with the completion rates of those. But we utilized the current tools that we have, right? Like the current system that we had to use was through Blackboard, which wasn't terrible. And Blackboard Ultra is coming out. So get pumped about that. I do think that will actually be very beneficial. Was that a commercial that I just did?
I think it was.
A little plug for Blackboard Ultra.
Blackboard does not sponsor this, by the way.
No, they are not. But my friends on campus who have done a lot of work for Blackboard Ultra would love that I just mentioned it now like 7 times. I've said it. Okay. Anyway.
We're going to do a little count there.
Yeah. Little ticker right there. Yeah. Okay. So, but in all seriousness, I do think that'll be a beneficial update or change to how we utilize Blackboard without having a true orientation platform. And so, or orientation software, I should say. So a lot of universities have like a true system software package that host their orientation, their online modules or their online lessons. We just aren't in a place right now. And again, we made do with what we had, and I do think ultimately it was fine. What I would love to do to beef up that, I said that weird, to beef that up, would be to bring in more campus partners to make some more high level production value videos and cool flair, right? Like make it jazzier. You can only do so much. Fun. Yeah. I mean, we made some videos. I know an old grad student that was here that helped us make a video page. And so, yeah, we did what we needed to do, and I think it was generally fine. I just think that if we could like expand and grow it and make it this very professional, polished videos and all that, which of course would take a little bit more budget and such. So those would be, I know those are pretty practical. I didn't say like give everyone a cool this or that. I don't know. I'm trying to think like give away cool things to everyone. Give everyone a brand new laptop. I don't know. I'm sure there's some other cool things I should have said if I had an unlimited budget besides a cool online software package and overnight orientation. But in all seriousness, that would be really helpful and amazing if we could do that.
You still took your realist style there, right?
Yeah, it's always there. It's always there at the top.
Yeah. Well, I mean, President Davies, if you're watching this, which you probably should be anyways, because we're interviewing your staff members, you should put this into place: a two-day orientation with an overnight stay and some better software, or Blackboard Ultra.
I mean, Blackboard Ultra is a thing.
Okay.
I said it again. Yeah. Kick. But for fall 24. So the new incoming freshmen for 24 are going to be experiencing it. So I'm excited to see what it all has to offer. But yeah, if I had to throw in something even cooler, I would say maybe we could have like a really cool dinner or like a fancy reception, or I don't know, like bring in some cool extra flair to the day that we just obviously can't do right now. I would really have to think about that. Like, what would I want that flair to be? I would ask the students, like like I talked earlier, like I would ask current students, like, what would you want from orientation if I had an endless budget? What would you envision?
Laptop.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like free things, I think would take it above and beyond.
Right. Maybe a little silent disco action.
Oh, that would
be
fun.
You know, like
I wouldn't be mad about that. Yeah. I'd probably jump right in.
I know. I love that for some reason. Just really
I've never done one.
You haven't done one?
No, but I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, they're awesome.
One day I will.
One day. Awesome. Okay. I'm curious to get your perspective on this real quick.
Okay.
But how can we continue to challenge and push the importance of leadership and leadership development at both the macro or large scale level and the micro or the everyday kind of stuff level to make positive change?
That is deep. Okay. Do you mean at CMU or in general? Take it how I want?
Yeah, take it as I will? Yeah.
Okay.
Just lean into it,
Lean in, hence the name of the show.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing to impact leadership change and development, or leadership development and the macro and micro level to make everyday change. I think it probably, I would say, starts with individuals caring enough. Like we talked about that. How great would it be if everyone had more accountability?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's probably a very simplistic response. But again, the realist in me tells you it would start with everyone caring enough.
Yeah.
So in terms of CMU, though, if I could like bubble us into one area of leadership development and change, I think it probably would boil down to kind of the things that we've talked about already today. trying to know what we even mean when we say meet students where they are. I really liked our conversation we had about that because I couldn't agree more. What do students want? How can we get them to answer that question or have those self-reflection skills or be able to articulate kind of, again, everything we've talked about, I feel like answers this question. So
there we go.
Can we just rewind, but go back and see? And so micro level, what can we do in smaller groups to get students that are, again, maybe not getting as engaged to feel like it's important? How do we explain to students the importance of the leadership development and building that in their own way for themselves? Macro level, oh gosh, I feel like, again, most of the things we've already talked about, trying to have that bigger picture view of how it is important to students. How do we tell them that, though, right? I don't have an answer to this one. This is a hard one to not have time to think about. I did not prep for this question.
You're
that's
good.
for sure.
I just threw you into it.
It's okay. Totally fine. But how do we convince students that it's important? I guess it all boils down to really that, both the macro and micro level. I think you could look at that in both of those realms. The details, the specific things you need to do to get there, and then like overarching, what are we doing here on campus to kind of shout that from the rooftop or the mountain that is non-existent in Mount Pleasant. So yeah, I know, right? Do you ever see that shirt before? Like, I climbed. There's like a shirt that says I climbed the top of Mount Pleasant. Anyway, sorry, segue there, little tangent. Yeah, I think I'm tangenting because I don't know a good answer to this, Brandon. I feel like we're trying. We are trying in many different pockets, and maybe that's part of it too. From a macro level, is like, how can we all streamline all these random efforts all throughout campus into maybe one larger, more effective and impactful version. So yeah, more to think about on that one. That wasn't a great answer.
Well, I think it's a
self-feedback.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good starting point, and I think we talked about through the show. I mean, someone that you're pretty familiar with always says that leadership matters, and it really does, right? And we kind of push that narrative, and I think continue to challenge our institution to make that known. Because again, not only does it encompass so many of the things we talked about, like some of those human skills and things like that, and it's great for future careers and things, but it also makes campus life here better, right? When we're working together, finding ways to help one another along their journeys, right? And in developing those critical skills. So awesome. All right. I got one last question for you before we kind of jump into everyone's favorite part of the show. All right. If you could share one piece of leadership advice with our audience in relation to leadership or leadership development, what would it be?
That's a great question. And I'm going to say, based off of my own personal experiences, is to find a mentor who can help build you into the leader and person that you want to be. And I say from my own personal experiences, not because I had the world's best mentor, because I didn't really have one at all.
Ooh.
I've had people who've influenced me. I've had, again, I mentioned my supervisor, my boss from Target. My boss now is supportive. And I don't have like negative feelings about that, right? It's positive experiences and great working environments. But like, I can't truly and confidently say that I feel like I've had a mentor in the way that I feel like I would have loved to have had a mentor, especially a woman mentor, for my own identity purposes and my own, who that I identify as a woman and female, and that I would want to have someone else who I think would be able to share and help go through, process through different things that, maybe they've seen and could help me navigate. And I never really had that. So I try my best to be a mentor then to others, because I feel like I didn't really get that as much as a student or as a grown-up, to be honest, even now.
Yeah.
So to kind of fill that void, I will try to be the mentor instead of the mentee. And if that's my advice, is let you find one. I think that that could be a huge and valuable impact to your life. And then again, you can pay it forward and kind of play the same role for someone else or someone else's, right? Multiple people.
That's awesome. Well, it's never too late to find a mentor.
I know it's not.
We'll get you connected. You'll find someone.
I have a short list. I have to probably start just knocking on doors at this point. Like, will you be my mentor? Is that awkward?
So no, sometimes you got to ask.
Sarah
right?
Offerman, would you like to be my mentor?
I mean, she probably would be down,
right?
right?
I'm sure she would. She's pretty great. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely, you're right. It's not too late. But I do get fulfillment from hopefully feeling like a mentor to others. So I'll reverse it. But yeah, I will put that on my list.
That's
for
good.
my own growth opportunity.
Yeah.
Find a mentor.
It could be someone too, a peer in a different
Correct.
relation. Yeah, it could be anyone.
It could be.
Which we learned actually a lot about mentorship in our last week's episode and also
there we
previous
go.
episodes. So
Maybe
that's
I should go
perfect.
back in time
Yeah,
and talk
you
to
should.
John.
You should watch episode 8
I
and
should.
episode 3 of Leaning Into
Done.
Leadership. Yep, we'll send it over to you.
Dunsies.
Alrighty, so we're gonna hop into everyone's favorite part of the show, the
'Kay.
Melo moment. So, little thing we like to do on our show is our previous guest gets to ask our next guest a question in relation to leadership. They don't get to know who it is.
Okay.
But yeah, so they get to do that, and then you get to ask the next guest a question after answering that
Great.
question. So again, we're gonna bring out our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, our producer, Melo. He's gonna
All right.
hit the Melo moment here.
Love it, Melo. Let's go.
How you doing, Erin?
I'm so great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
It's Monday.
It's Monday,
Mhm.
a fun day.
Mm-hmm.
Please name one of your biggest influential mentors who has spoken something powerful into your life, and then tell us how they have impacted you. And you kind of mentioned that you didn't have any mentors, so I would say, who was the most influential person in your life that impacted you?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, I still definitely have people who have made a difference. I just feel like none of them I could pinpoint as like a mentor in the sense. I feel like we kind of explain mentors. So this is going to be so cheesy, y'all. As a heads up, disclaimer. Okay.
I'm down for it.
Disclaimer alert right now. And don't make fun of me, and don't tell him this, but he'll probably watch it. But I would actually say Dan, my current spouse and husband and partner in life, who is probably already was a guest on your show. I know he was. So, but in all seriousness, again, don't tell him I said this. Or you can. It probably would be actually really nice for me to tell him this myself. He's made me a better person. I do feel like, again, I grew and learned a lot as an undergrad and as a grad student in college. But Dan has a really great way of questioning decisions that I might make or the ways I might be reacting to things, or helps me to kind of calm if and when I need to calm. He is the calm one of the partnership that we currently are in. And so I've learned a lot from him in a positive way about not only being a leader or a professional staff member, of course, but just as a person in general. He has extremely high integrity standards and being able to be there for students and others, staff too. But I definitely have learned a great deal watching him and listening to him, and just, again, having general conversations with him and his perspectives on life. And it's been great to be able to say that is part of our relationship and partnership, that I can say he definitely impacted me in multiple different ways. So, yeah, I know that's super cheesy.
No, it's pretty cool. I mean, you say someone's name 3 times and they pop up. He walked right by and was just
Did he
looking,
literally walk by? Oh, gosh.
walking by,
Jay.
just looking in. So, yeah, I feel that. It was kind of, I would say, can I ask? It was like a peer mentor kind of, because you guys are probably around the same age or around the same career, and it's just like more of that informal kind of mentorship.
Yeah.
And which I think can go a long way, because I think when it comes down to the formal and informal, or the mentee and the mentor, it's like a somewhat of a distance, whether it's age or profession or whatever. But I think a lot of times those peer mentors can be even more impactful to you, because they're going through the same thing you're going through.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
I feel that.
I think that was probably a piece of it. And we were clearly on like similar paths and like life and work. And, obviously now we are married and have 2 children. So like even the perspectives and the lens that he brings into that it sometimes changes my perspective or lens and ways I'm looking at things. And so, I definitely would say it would be more like a peer-to-peer, although we are now married. But, so maybe that adds a weird, complicated factor or level to the mentorship. But I really have appreciated a lot of the things that he's taught me and that I've learned about. Can I tell a story?
Yeah, tell the
Okay.
story.
None of you. Okay. So one time I backed into my mom in my car in my driveway, and I dented my car pretty decently, and I had a $500 deductible. Okay. Uncool. No one wants to pay $500 when you literally just backed into your own mom in your driveway.
Yeah.
Her car was parked, right? Dumb. Okay. Wasn't used to it being there. That's why I backed into it, for the record. Okay. So I went into Dan's office. This was years ago, by the way. I've grown and learned a lot, again, from Dan Gagan. Okay, so I went into Dan's office, and I was like, I told him, well, maybe I'll just say that someone hit me, which is like, yeah, breaking the law, right? And insurance fraud. And, you probably should not do that, right? And I was like, but everyone does that. And he literally just looked at me, went and started rummaging around for something in a cupboard. And I was like, what are you doing? We're having a conversation. Why are you just stopping? Got a binder, got it out of the cupboard, brought it to me, opened it up to like a certain page, and was like, and like set it down. And in front of me, it was the Dirty Dozen, the top 12 rationalizations and excuses that we make for behaviors that we do every day, basically. And one of the top 12 Dirty Dozen is, but everybody does it. And so he literally heard me say that and was like, ding, leadership guy, here I am. And got this Dirty Dozen thing. And so I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yep. That's profound. It's okay. So actually from then on, I actually presented at the Connections Leadership Conference, the Dirty Dozen, for multiple years, because it really is, it's super simple things that we say and do, but can make a really big impact, i.e. committing insurance fraud. Which I didn't do, by the way. I paid the deductible and got my car fixed.
I'm going to have to look
like a
into
good
that.
person.
The Dirty Dozen.
The Dirty Dozen.
Okay.
And I'm sure he still has, he probably still has that same binder. Let's get real. And so it's things like that where, again, that's how he's made me. I can't tell you that I wouldn't have committed insurance fraud if I was not dating Dan, and that happened to me 10 years before, and I probably would have just, right? Like, I can't honestly tell you that I wouldn't have done it differently.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I waited like a year and a half before I decided, okay, fine. I rode around with a dented car for a minute before I was like, fine, pay my $500, get it fixed, like the right person, like the right thing to do. But yeah, it's the Dirty Dozen, I would say. Check it out. It's pretty profound things. Everybody does it. It's not that big of a deal. Nobody gets hurt. It's things like that you say, and then they like explain, but this and then this, and so very interesting. Cool. But yeah, he definitely put me in my place with that one in a very good way. Glad I didn't break the law. So yeah, I appreciate him in lots of ways for reasons like that, making me increasing my integrity or whatever, just making me a better person overall. So,
I like that. I like that answer.
Thanks.
And it was good talking to you.
It was good talking to you.
I'll see you later.
See you later.
The Dirty Dozen.
Yeah, check it out.
Yep. I think find yourself a partner too that you're gonna learn and grow with. That's like a big thing, right?
Yeah,
there
for
you
sure.
go. Boom.
There we go. Right.
Facts, right?
Relationship goals.
Like, why would you want to be in a relationship if you're not learning and growing? Anyways,
Correct, yeah.
That's a whole different thing.
It is.
You know?
It's a whole
healthy
process.
relationships,
Right,
right?
there we
Like
go.
you got it's a whole learning goal of the Leadership
There you
Institute.
go. Correct.
You mentioned a couple earlier too, which is I was connected to, social responsibility and identity development.
Yeah, for sure.
But kind of going on to that, first of all, thanks, Melo, for an awesome Melo moment. That was a good
thanks.
one, but also a great answer. Now you get to ask the question for our next guest.
Well, when you started explaining this, that was literally going to be like my question, but let me revamp it in a different way.
Ooh.
So my question would be, in spirit of our feedback conversation,
Okay.
what has been some of the hardest feedback that you've had to receive in the past as a leader? And how did you handle it? And what did you do to help learn and grow?
I think that's a great question. I'm excited to see who gets to answer that.
I'm excited too.
You know? But
Episode 10 coming at ya.
episode 10, right? You're gonna have to wait and see who that is. But it's gonna be a good answer, I think. So, next up, where can people find you?
Physically on campus?
Yeah, physically on
I
campus.
am located in Ronan Hall, 250, 260, just kidding. Oh my gosh, do I know where my own office is? Ronan Hall, 260. 250 is where academic advising and tutoring and supplemental instruction are located, if you want that. Also part of the Office of Student Success, by the way. A little plug there. But I'm in 260. Nobody puts baby in a corner. That is from Dirty Dancing. But we are indeed in the corner of Ronan Hall. So we are behind the Office of Residence Life. So you can find Res Life. Just keep walking backwards, and you can find us behind them. And I'd be happy to chat and see anyone that wants to stop by and say hi.
Awesome. And any extra resources you might have? If not, you can send us a list, and we can again link those in the comments or description box.
I'm trying to think if I didn't say any that I would have wanted to say earlier. If I think, I'll definitely follow up with you. Right now,
Okay.
I can't think of any.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Well,
Drawn blank.
we talked a lot about resources,
We
so
really did.
you might have just
I
Going
might have
on,
covered
yeah.
all my brain's worth of resources, but if I think
Because
of
there's so
something else-
many.
the
yeah.
Dirty Dozen right there.
The Dirty
I'll
Dozen.
find you that information
Yeah.
as well.
We'll have to
Yeah.
find the Dirty Dozen.
Boom.
Awesome.
It's from the Leadership Institute.
Okay.
Mm,
Some really
yeah.
shape. Nice.
So it might be on the. I don't know if it's on the website, but I'm sure if you Google it, you could probably find something.
Okay.
Or Dan.
Dan, yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
Erin, it was a pleasure having you on the
Thanks,
show.
Lisa. Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. We really appreciate
Thanks.
it. Again, that's all we have for you today on Lean Into Leadership.
Appreciate it.
Until next time, we'll see you next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, keep leading the way.
Thanks, y'all.
Peace.